Just 4 days ago, the big one killed a smaller raptor. So I'm always watching her. That one, when she looks at you, you can see she's working things out. She doesn't test the fences anymore. She watches the others do it for her. Good God. Oh, shit.
Raptors, more specifically velociraptors, turkey-sized fuzzballs at Jurassic Park, managed to turn into 10-foot-long killing machines with an IQ higher than most of the population. There's no shortage of lost tapes or found footage showing just how terrifying Jurassic Park's versions are. I mean, there were some even worse in the books. One of my favorite scenes was it dragging a child in a cage towards the jungle so they could figure out how to open it and then rip the poor kid to shreds. Good stuff. However, we don't really get lore accurate found footage or hypothetical scenarios of past events that would align to the canon story of the movie. There are some exceptions like Chronoticon's video who show what Arnold possibly had to go through after the electricity went out. However, another creator called Awada has done something similar. Only now he's showing us how the raptors were so terrifying in the movie and the reason why all this started when that one member appeared. If you don't know who Awada is, he is one of the greats when it comes to Jurassic Park animations. He's animated novel scenarios and made animated films based off the Jurassic franchise with his own twist. However, some are hypotheticals or documented lore about a canon story that didn't just make the cut in the movie. And his latest video, well, it's just that. I knew by the thumbnail it's about to be nefarious. So go ahead and check him out if you haven't already. Link's gonna be at the top of the description. And so will my Discord for those who want to join. This footage is being recorded in 1991, so roughly 2 years before they decide to semi-open the park and then close it at the same time. And the person doing the documentation is no other than Muldoon himself. No one could do this better. We're shown a raptor enclosure that looks a lot larger than the one we see in the film, and apparently has more advanced feeding systems. What really does it for me is that the enclosure is built like one of those multi-door aviaries. You know, in those zoos where you have to shut one door before you go into another to prevent the birds from, flying away? Yeah, works really well against parakeets when I went to Miami Zoo. Not sure about murder birds though.
As it stands currently, only selected carnivore handlers and myself are permitted to feed the raptors. Let me show you how that's done. The authorized handler will use his swipe card to enter the buffer enclosure with a live animal, usually a cow. We've tried feeding the raptors beef, lamb, chicken, pig, you name it, but they won't touch the stuff. They need living prey because they want to hunt. They want to coordinate and take down a live animal. So we've resorted to bringing in a cow or a goat once every 3 days or so. The handler will lead the cow into this enclosure. This buffer enclosure is double fenced with a steel barricade internally and then a 10,000 volt electric fence externally, mounted on concrete slabs which extend 10 feet underground to prevent the raptors digging.
So this enclosure has went through a lot of modifications to make sure people don't get ripped apart along with the prey items. However, even Muldoon mentions that he doesn't even feel comfortable still with his seemingly foolproof system. Hell, I wouldn't either. I don't care if it's 10,000 volts keeping me at bay. I don't know what Wu put in their entire genetic makeup. I mean, he also says that it's more than 10 feet high along with steel roofs to prevent jumping before they can apparently clear that. And also concrete foundations throughout just to make sure they can't dig. In my mind, this is higher than some prisons, yet for some reason this enclosure wasn't enough for the pack, leading to us seeing the smaller, almost more lockdown-like enclosure in the movie. So these things had to have done something foul to be taken out of this pen. I mean, even now they don't quite use the crane method for bringing in cows, who have to be live, since the sadists want the animal to be alive before they eat them. Now they put the bovine in a locked off part of the pen, like what is done in zoos today with large predators. Also, Muldoon convinced Hammond to make it so a child wouldn't just see a live cow get torn apart in front of them. Could be a good life lesson. For what? I don't know.
Standing now is the rear of the raptor exhibit, out of sight from the Explorer Tour track. I personally don't think any child visiting this park should see a 6-foot reptile eviscerating a poor cow, and that's why we feed them away from public eyes. Once the cow is brought into this pen, the handlers exit, locking this gate, and then proceed out the buffer enclosure. It is only once both gates have been closed and the handler is safely behind 2 locked gates that the raptors are permitted to enter this enclosure and feed. This fence, as well as the electric fence beyond, slide open, and the raptors enter where I am currently standing. For obvious reasons, I will not open this gate. Now, if we look out into the raptor enclosure, there are 5 female animals in here. We bred 8 originally, and then 2 more were cloned on Sauna, but 1 did not survive transport to the park, leaving 1 big one to join the pack in here. When she came in, she took over the pride, killing half the original brood.
So this was basically the origin for the most notorious raptor in the entire franchise. She wasn't originally part of the pack that was already on Nublar at the time, but the moment she came, she quickly killed half the pack, cementing herself as the lead animal instantly. This is somewhat expected since I assume the previous head raptors likely didn't want to listen to some random new member, so she killed a few to make an example out of them. However, what I don't understand is, why keep killing more raptors, even though they are seemingly loyal, to Muldoon's point of view at least.
When she came in, she took over the pride, killing half the original brood. Just 4 days ago, the big one killed a smaller raptor, so I'm always watching her. I don't believe we'll spot any of them right now, and that's probably because they are nocturnal animals, as are a lot of predators today. I've had many discussions with John about feed timing and whatnot, and possibly switching to nocturnal feeding, as daytime may cause stress and agitated behaviors. The last thing we want is an agitated velociraptor, believe me. And on that note, that completes this log of the feeding procedures. What the? Is that another? Shit.
So the big one is just a big menace. This seems to be more than just dominance, because at this point in time I'm sure the rest would be almost totally submissive towards her. Yet she continues to kill more pack members. Just 4 days before she killed one, and when Muldoon was recording this tape, he discovered another dead one. The only other reason I could think of that somewhat explains this mindless killing is probably some of the raptors not 100% submitting and occasionally defying or challenging her position. This is something seen in some pack animals today. Sometimes some adult males of the same family may challenge the leader, not directly but by subtle acts of dominance such as eating first or scent marking, and this leads to them either getting killed or chased off. One of those options obviously isn't available to the raptors, and they're all female. The raptors are also agitated when feeding in the day, as Muldoon tries to convince Hammond to feed them at night. You know what? This frustration could be another reason for the big one's aggressiveness. Who could say? But with another member dead by the big one gutting her and the cameras not being to pick up everything, Muldoon documents their behavior at night to see just how the pack dynamics have changed.
That big one is a real problem. She's costing Hammond hundreds of thousands. When she was introduced, the dynamics of the pack changed significantly. Dominant from the start and absolutely lethal to any raptor that did not fall in line. She shows extreme intelligence, even problem-solving intelligence. That one, when she looks at you, you can see she's working things out. She doesn't test the fences anymore. She watches the others do it for her. They obey her completely. She directs them. I've seen that look before in lions and wolves, but not in reptiles. It's not instinct. It's something else.
I can tell you what it is. It's the I'm trying to find every way I can to get out, and when I do, I'm coming for you first. A promise she would keep to Muldoon in the movie. I also gotta say that these raptors look horrifying. The dark eyes and deliberate movements give them a very eerie vibe. Like, it's not just random aggressiveness, just a calm look and some not even taking your existence into account. But you know the moment that gate opens, they'll dart right for you. Aside from that, every time Muldoon mentions the big one and her pack mates, it sounds more and more that she will kill another member for the slightest mistake. Like, this is some North Korea type stuff right here. She alone has managed to cost Hammond hundreds of thousands of dollars from all the destruction she caused alone. Whether it be destroying structures or killing other raptors which are expensive themselves to make. But now she doesn't do it herself. Maybe she's found something out, or developed a new way of escaping without her directly being involved.
This is the big one in the back. And now that they know there's something in the feeding enclosure, we might get to see what I came here for. Their communication is far more advanced than reptiles of today. There's verbal cues and sounds, but there's also eye movements and tail twitches. One thing about the big one is she's fairly stoic in her communication style. She's aggressive when she wants to be, but is not as animated as the others. She'll stand still and stare directly into your eyes for hours. The others I describe as more bird-like in their behavior with erratic movements. Oh, here we go. She's chosen one of them, and they're off.
One of the downsides of watching this on the TV is you can't just instantly pause it. Like, this wasn't a big loud jump scare or anything, but it still got me good. I honestly thought that camera would just be following that one lone raptor who got sent orders from the big one, who is basically a dictator in her pack. She doesn't do any physical stuff herself really, just gives plants and observes, and the smaller raptor is definitely wise for not even stuttering when given the order to do whatever it is she was sent to do. Seems she was always this smart. I mean, coupled with intelligence that's advanced even for her species and raw power, I'd see why the rest can't win. Even Muldoon says that she moves much differently from the others who behave more like birds compared to her. As for the one that almost gave me a heart attack, it's one of the two older raptors who are very loyal to the big one. The suck-ups of the group basically. However, this kind of cozying up is the very reason there are the few raptors left and why the others just die in a truly nightmarish manner.
These two are a few years older, and they seem to be the most loyal to the big one. They seem to be quite obedient to her. But where did she go? See, that's what she does. She gives out orders and then sits back and watches. And these two clowns do her bidding. Good God. Oh, shit. I've never seen one of them make contact with the fence for such a long time. Jesus Christ, I think she fried herself. You were here to distract me. Clever girl.
That's messed up, bro. I'll get to everything else later, but I just want to point out how the big one basically sent this younger raptor to their death. Her plan was to use this one as a pawn to try to test that part of the fence, while she just stayed and watched along with the other two who are distractions. That smaller raptor was... I don't think it was ever gonna live. It was either gonna get burnt by the fence or get ripped apart by the big one for defying orders. Even though Muldoon pointed out that this one likely was too young to know when to let go, I'm almost certain the big one knew that as well, and she probably just wanted to get rid of the less experienced member for some reason, or she just saw it as collateral since it wouldn't be as useful as the more experienced females. Only after the chaos does the big one come out and greet Muldoon, at which he says, "Clever girl," you know, the classic phrase, but you could tell it's more disgust than fascination or awe. After this stunt, Muldoon and the other workers would have to now go into the pen to see the fate of the young raptor and figure out what to do with the troublesome female.
The following morning, the big one and her two remaining minions were tranquilized so that our vets could enter the enclosure and inspect the raptor's injuries. She sustained third-degree burns to all four limbs and lacerations to her mouth before being hurled some 40 feet away from the electric fence. She smelled of charred meat. Consequently, she died. This raptor in particular was far younger than the others. My guess is the big one picked on her specifically to test another region of the electric fence. This one mustn't have had the experience that the other raptors had, and couldn't manage to execute the task without frying herself in the process. I would almost feel sympathy for her if I didn't have an obsessive need to have them all destroyed before one of them eventually figures out how to escape their enclosure. The sedated raptors were moved from this enclosure to a far more reinforced pen. Unfortunately, that wasn't without another casualty.
I really do feel bad for that young female. As I said, she obviously was just collateral to the big one that test out stuff she likely knew already wouldn't work. The small one got shocked so bad it pitched 40 feet from the fence. Can't imagine that pain. Even Muldoon almost felt some remorse, but he thinks they should all be put down, seeing just how intelligent and unstable they are at the same time. And I agree, if they are capable of this level of planning, it is really only a matter of time until they somehow escape. Luckily that wouldn't be anytime soon, as the vets tranked out the remaining members, and they were soon relocated to that much more enclosed enclosure we see in the film. However, that small raptor wasn't the final tragedy before the movie, because in the first scene of the movie, we see some poor worker getting attacked by the big one, which led to Muldoon giving permission to shoot her. However, this didn't seem to kill her, but the worker passed away instead. The entire dynamic honestly makes sense, because in the movie we see the big one send the two subordinates on other missions while she goes out to do her own business. Hell, she even does the same thing she did here with this animation in the movie, which was using another raptor as a distraction and then coming directly at Muldoon after she ambushed him. Unfortunately for her, she didn't seem to know her limits and decided to attack the largest carnivore on the island at the time, leading to her own destruction. Could you imagine if the big one somehow wasn't killed and made it to Jurassic World like Rexy? That would be interesting, but that's the end of the animation. Another banger by Ali Awada. Highly recommend you guys go out and check out his videos on his channel if you haven't already. But that's all for today folks, I will see you Wednesday.